So, there's been lots of debate lately in the FGC around the legality of hitboxes. Should they be banned? What kind of things can they do? And we've been hearing a lot about like the broken things that people have been doing on them. But we haven't really been hearing about like the more difficult parts of learning hitbox, right? I mean, we saw Daigo's video where he struggled, but there's certain inputs that are like just more difficult to do on hitbox than on other devices, and I think it's just a part of the discussion that we don't really hear about. So I've been using Hitbox now for almost 2 years, and it's been fun, but I kind of switched because of hand pain reasons, so it would be really sad to see it go. That said, a lot of the videos and examples that are shown of things that are easier to do on Hitbox are shown in Street Fighter V, which has some leniency on the inputs that some other games don't have. I couldn't get it to launch, so I'm using Koihime as an example, but in this game, for example, you can DP by doing down, forward, down, and then down, forward again. And so on Hitbox, this is super easy. You just hold down forward and then tap your back button, and then you get like the fastest DP you can get. It's kind of busted, but you know, in these other examples that I'll show you, hopefully it'll make sense and you'll see what I'm talking about. Alright, so the first example I'm going to show you guys is in Tekken 7, and it's going to be a forward, back, forward input, like this. Oops. So like this one, right? And as you notice, the first time I tried to do that input, I messed it up, right? And that's because in Tekken 7, for these kinds of inputs, you need to make sure that between your forward and your back portion of the input, there's a neutral part. And on stick, you can't really mess that up, but on Hitbox, that's definitely something that can happen, because if you input it too fast, you might skip that neutral part. So this is something that you can kind of like practice and be like, oh, I'll just, input it slower or make sure that I do this correctly or whatever, and that kind of works. But in cases where you have to do it in a combo and it's very fast, like for example, you have to dash and then do it. During the dash, cancel the dash into it and then do like the next part right after. It'll happen pretty often that you'll mess it up. For the example, I'll just bring out my stick because it's easier to do this combo on stick. You do this and dash. And it's just, you just do it, you tap your dash, do it as soon as possible, right? And then you can't really mess that up. Well, I mean, you can, but whatever. It's a lot harder. However, on Hitbox, it's like very actually hard to get this part. Oops. See, I just messed that up because I had to link it. See? So even though sometimes you might like get it, like the timing is gonna change because, well, this time I kind of got it maybe. So because the window for it is very small, you might have to like put it tight there, but then you got to do it slowly, so then you might like miss the window and then do it, and it's kind of like not really safe on block, I think. So it's kind of an unfortunate situation, and you want to avoid that. But because you have to input it faster than you should normally, then it kind of creates this situation where there's a chance of messing it up that wasn't really occurring when you're playing stick.
Alright, so for my second example of something that is harder to input on a hitbox is going to be half circles in games where you cannot skip portions of the input. So in this case, it's BlazBlue Central Fiction 2 that I'm playing, and I'm playing my main character in this game, Mew, which has a lot of half circles in her combos, and they're all like off pretty fast cancels. So it's really easy to mess it up if you're trying to go fast. So I'll just show you an example here. So if you look on the top left on my inputs, you'll notice that the first half circle I did, I skipped the down forward part of the input. And it didn't give it to me, but then the second time I did it, I hit all the directions and then it gave it to me, right? This game is not super nice with your inputs. And because you're gonna often just cancel from like one normal, right, like this, it's really easy to mess up this part of the input, right? Alright, so one example of a combo that you might make this mistake a lot in is this one. Oops. Yeah, so I messed it up like twice there. Yeah, so the two mistakes I did there, one of them was missing a diagonal and one of them was missing the down part of the strict down, neutral down of the input. And what I've been trying to do to fix this is input it in a way where I don't have to time my releases in combination with my presses. So I time only presses and only releases. So I'll do forward, then down, and then that's going to give me down forward, and then I press back, and that's going to give me neutral down. Then I release forward,
then I release down, and then that gives me like the clean motion, right? And that way, you only think of it as one press, two press, three press, then one release, two release, and then you got your motion, right? Whereas it's easier to do that than to mix it up. So that might help anyone who's having trouble with this. In Guilty Gear Accent Core in Plus R, they gave Mei the ability to do charge 6 heavy into running command grab, right? And the input window for this is quite small, so it's something that, I'll mess up a lot. So if you look at my inputs down here, for example, you notice once again, not holding the down forward part is gonna mess it up. Yeah, so anyways, doing it on stick is much easier because it's all part of the same motion. And you can do that on Hitbox, but it's not like as intuitive, I feel. So you just do like forward and then like do half circle back, right? So it just, like, it's a lot easier to like not mess up one of those directions. All you need to do is time your presses correctly on the right hand, not on both hands, Oops, too close. Yeah, it's just like not something that you think about, but then you go on Hitbox, it's like, now I have to think about this. Yeah, and as I said, it's because of the speed at which you have to input it that you have more chances of messing it up. Alright, so next game we're going to talk about is Guilty Gear Xrd, and in this game, the motion that I have a lot of trouble with is the Tiger Knee motion. And Tiger Knee motion in this game is kind of hard because there's no leniency on it. You have to do the whole thing correctly, especially with Dizzy, because with Dizzy, there's additional inputs to your Tiger Knees, right? So the button that I'm talking about is the bubble, right? And the bubble is pretty cool, but you can aim it upwards or downwards when you're Tiger Kneeing it because, when you're inputting it, because that is going to send it upwards or downwards. So you have to input the Tiger Knee and then go down or up, or usually down. And so that makes a very fast sequence of inputs. So it's going to look something like this, right? Where the bubble is floating downwards instead of forward. And in her setups, it's a thing that you do very often, and just in her neutral in general. So this is something that actually gives me a lot of trouble because if you do your inputs, you're going to do down and then down forward. And then if you press up too fast, you're going to skip the forward part of your input, and then it's not going to give it to you, right? So an example of a combo that you'll do all the time, or a setup, is something like this. Right, where you're trying to do like dash P summon, and then from there you do the TK bubble aim downwards, and then that kind of catches them if they jump, and then it also acts as a safe jump because you recover fast enough to block reversals. It's overall like really a good setup. I mean, it kind of loses to Blitz depending on spacing, but like I have a really hard time doing this setup on Hitbox because you got to input everything like so fast and minutiously. Like I'll get it sometimes, but most of the time it's just and then I'll just get frustrated and do it again, right? So on stick, however, it's just like, oops, it's been a while. Yeah, right, something like that. Where it's just like you just like follow the gate kind of thing, where you just move your stand. And I mean, I did play stick for a long time, and Tiger Knees did give me a lot of trouble at first. And so I did try to replicate that practice on Hitbox, but it's just like it's very hard as well. I feel you don't like doing things that are like inconsistent, especially when like all of your neutral is summoning these things and trying to TK all the time. Frustrating. Yeah. But yeah, that's it for this example. You might notice that in other games it might not be as strict on Tiger Knee game inputs. I'm not sure. But in a game like this where you cannot skip one of the directions, and you have a follow-up direction to do it, it's pretty hard. All right. So another game where this can come up pretty frequently actually is BB Tag, right? In BB Tag, this is something that happens in every game, but you're gonna do like quarter cycle inputs on reaction to stuff like really, really fast, but from a down back position. And the main example I can think of in this case is if you're fighting Batista, right? Because Batista has full screen laser and full screen orb, and the orb itself is can kind of like let her get things more or less started or whatever. So you want to be able to block that full screen laser but then react to the orb with your full screen super that is on quarter circle. So in this case, you're holding down back, and then you want to go as fast as possible to quarter circle. And what happens when you do that is you have a high chance of skipping one of your inputs, right? So let's look. This is what the super looks like. But then what might happen is you might do this instead, where you skip your down portion and of your input, and then just get your dash instead, in your grab instead. Sorry, because in this game there's nothing registered to this input combination except BC, which is grab. So let's say that I'm trying to practice reacting to them on random. I might, get hit by grab, block the laser, and get hit by grab. It's just like in training mode. Of course, you can do like, oh, okay, I'll just return to neutral and then do it. But then you do it too slowly and it doesn't actually punish. So you're trying to input like as fast as possible, and then that's actually playing against you because it's making you skip inputs, which isn't really a thing that happens on stick because you're just like following like the same motion that you just do except faster, right? And I mean, it is, I guess, something that you can kind of practice, but it is an extra frustration there that you don't really have on other input devices. So just some closing words for this video. You might have noticed that some things are harder on hitbox, some things are easier. Of course, some things are easier. Dash blocking, for example, I could do it like super fast on a hitbox. I mean, you can do it very similarly on controller or on stick. It's like slightly harder, slightly easier on this. Like, does it really give you like that much of an advantage? I mean, sure, maybe arguable. I don't know. But then there's stuff like this, for example, that I might mess up because it's a half circle input that has to be inputted pretty quickly. And that I mentioned before, I mess these up sometimes. But I mean, like, for me personally, I like this because I especially for things like double tapping or dashes or whatnot, I'm just more used to pressing keys than moving a lever, actually, because you notice I have my keyboards here. I play them, and I just like the control that it gives me. The lever, I would put a lot of strength into it when I was playing on stick, and I would press my buttons really hard. That's actually part of the reason why I injured myself, because the angle was wrong, and I was like just kind of wrecking myself there. But with the lever also, I would like move it around a lot, and often at the end of rounds, my stick would be like in a completely different position. Often at the end of my knees, and at the end of the round, I'd have to bring it back for the next round. So just keeping my energy in check and all that. It's been giving me a bit more self-control, less emotionally attached to my games. I still get upset sometimes, but it's a personal thing. It's whatever. Yeah, so feel free to share any experiences you might have had with Hitbox. Maybe someone else had different difficulties. Maybe I'll run into them eventually. So let me know, if you've found solutions to things, or if you're also looking for solutions, or if there's something maybe I didn't explain clearly enough in the video to clear something up. Maybe that would be useful. Anyways, that's all for today. Thanks for watching, and peace.